because I was on holiday for a few days. So I try to stay offline when I'm on holiday. I don't know about you guys, but I like to try to keep away from my phone, keep away from anything online. So we're looking at CPE again. We've got 2 CPE essays from my Italian student. And I think they're very well done, as always. I think he's done both under exam conditions, which is never easy. So let's have a look at his essays. We ought to quickly look at the question because there is something important I want to point out here. And I'm sorry that the question is a little bit blurry, but I'll read it through very quickly. So he has to write an essay summarizing and evaluating the key points from these 2 texts. So let's read these texts. Nowadays, in some cultures, there may often be confusion between generations about what is acceptable behavior in certain situations. Older people sometimes complain, for example, about the real or imagined rudeness of others, such as in the use of electronic devices in public places. However, the younger generation do not regard electronic communication as intrusive, but rather as fundamental to their way of life. Only increased mutual understanding is likely to resolve potential conflict or confusion in any society. In this case, as in all others, it pays to be aware of other people's points of view. Okay, so that's the first text that he's got to summarize and evaluate. Do notice that it says the younger generation do and not does. Certainly made me raise an eyebrow. Of course, you could say the younger generation does, and formally, it's actually more correct. In any formal essay, I would write the younger generation does. But you could use them as a they, you could use them as a plural form, although in my opinion, it's far less formal. Excuse me. And there was something else I wanted to mention. Confusion between generations. I think we'd normally say confusion among generations, personally. Anyway, let's leave it as it is. The second text goes like this: should we always aim to do what society expects of us? No. What society needs is individuality. Worrying about what other people think, and it doesn't say older, it says other people think, inhibits enthusiasm and creativity. Nothing new is ever achieved by conforming to expected social norms. This is not only true for society's innovators. Everybody needs a strong sense of their own worth as an individual. This is essential for psychological well-being and the ability to function effectively in one's personal and professional life. Paying too much attention to society's conventions can be counterproductive in these and other ways. Write your essay. Okay, so let's have a look at my student's essay. And let's see if anybody else has come. Good morning, Moonlight. Good morning, Katya. Okay, so societies have always dealt with conflicts between generations. Some people say that youngsters should pay more attention to what elders think of as unacceptable behavior, while others claim that youngsters should take no notice of society's conventions and instead follow their own inclinations and values. So you can see I've made a few corrections here. I want elders think. Yeah, some people say, present simple, that youngsters should pay more attention to what elders think. Let's stay in present simple. Surely we mean every week, every year, every decade, elders think this behavior is unacceptable. We don't want to go into past here. And so we want some people say blah, 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 while others claim good. That's parallel. And I think, you've got this present simple. You've got, okay, should pay. It's present really, isn't it? It's a modal verb, but it's talking about generally youngsters should pay. Every year they should pay. Yeah, more attention to what elders think. It's got to be present simple. And remember, the preposition with think is of when we're talking about opinion. Yeah, what do you think of my new shoes? Yeah, what do you think of his behavior? I think his behavior was terrible. Yeah, so it's got to be think of as unacceptable behavior. While others claim that youngsters should take no notice, this is the vocabulary that we use here. We say take no notice, and we don't say you should not take notice. We don't do it like that. We just don't. It just doesn't sound so natural to put the not there. We do say should take no notice of society's conventions, and not of which are, it sounds clumsy, just of society's conventions, and instead follow their own inclinations and values. I've chosen a plural noun here because you've got a plural noun here. So follow their own desires and values. I think that they were fine. That was fine as well. Or follow their own, follow their own goals and values, maybe. But yeah, I liked inclinations. Okay, the first author suggests that problems arise when older and younger people do not understand each other. Now, I've put an here, and it's just because you got an here. Yeah, it really is about parallel structure. I know I go on about parallel structure a lot, but it's because I sincerely believe that most people have never been taught anything to do with parallel structure. And I sincerely believe that this is how you improve your English. I don't think it matters if you're a native speaker or a foreign speaker of English. I think if you learn about parallel structure, which you probably haven't already, if you learn about parallel structure, you will improve straight away, immediately. And the more you look out for parallel structure, excuse me, it's still morning. The more you look out for parallel structure in the texts that you read, literature, for example, is bursting with parallel structure. The more you appreciate it and the more you include it in your own work, in your writing and in your speaking. So please do think about it. And of course, I do know that this student certainly does think about it. And so I know you all do, guys, but try to, very often you'll see that I'm correcting things just because I want them in parallel. Okay, for example, the use of electronic communication in public places is deemed bad by elders nowadays. It's got to be is deemed bad, and it's because deem here is a copular verb. You can have an adjective after deemed. In fact, you mustn't have an adverb, just like the verb to be or the verb to seem or the verb to get. These are all copular verbs, and so you can just have an adjective. It got hot, it seemed hot, it seemed bad, it seemed awful, it is deemed bad, it is deemed awful. Okay, by elders nowadays, when youngsters find it absolutely normal. Either using WhatsApp to send a message to one of your friends, or posting content, not a content, because content is uncountable, or posting content on Facebook or on Instagram. Now, that's a very long, I quite like this. It's a complex sentence, this, because the student has decided to use a very long clause where a correlative conjunction, either X or Y, is acting as this whole clause is acting as the thing which this pronoun renames. It's like an A positive. You've got a whole clause here, either using blah, 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 or posting blah, 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 blah. These are the modern ways. I liked it. I liked the sentence, but I changed it from this is the modern way. And it's because logically, you've got either using blah, 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 or posting blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure he has thought about parallel structure because he's got using and then he's got posting. So well done for doing that. That's excellent. It does sound good. But here you haven't really got two things. Now, I know with subject-verb agreement, when we say either X or Y, Y determines the verb. I know this, with subject-verb agreement. But this is not a subject and a verb. This is a whole clause which has got two different actions, using or posting. And so because it's got two modern ways that people interact, I would like to see these are, using and posting, the modern ways to interact with other people and share your opinion with your friends. We need some kind of determiner in here, and so I recommend your. I think that's what we usually say here. So elder people should try to understand such novel forms of behavior. Behavior is uncountable, and so forms of behavior. I changed from behaviors to forms of behavior. Instead of blaming society's problems on them, on these forms of behavior, instead of blaming society's problems on these forms of behavior. And that's how we use blame. Blame something on somebody. You can blame something on somebody. Okay, now this sentence is almost correct. Let's have a look at it. The second author argues, parallel and not argued. Look at this. The first author suggests, present simple. The second author argued. What did the second author write his paper way before the first one or something. We need it parallel, yeah. And even paragraphs ought to be parallel when you're saying the first author, blah, 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 the second author, blah, 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 blah. They must be parallel. Surely it's more logical to keep them all in the same tense, yeah? Makes sense, doesn't it? The first author suggests, the second author argues. So good morning, Emma, and good morning, Julia, and good morning, Malgorzata. That's a nice name. I've never seen anything like that. Malgorzata. I like that. Okay, so why have I highlighted this sentence? Well, let's have a look what it says. The second author argues that youngsters ought not to pay attention to what older people think of them. Yeah, youngsters, older. Let's have a look at the second text quickly. Can you find the word youngsters or older in any of this? And I'm afraid if you look carefully, you can't. All of that is in the first text. It is not in the second text. Now be careful here, because I am worried that they will penalize you for writing a sentence like that, which is incorrect technically. The second author does not argue that youngsters ought not to pay attention to what older people think of them. He doesn't argue that at all. He doesn't mention older and younger people. So be really pedantic with this exam. Don't write things which somebody could say, well, that's not true. Yeah. And I think anyone would be right to say that that's not true. The second text, the second author does not argue that. And so that's going to drag down your content mark. Yeah. If we're looking at the four criteria, and I've got to be honest and say, look, these criteria are arbitrary, and there is a lot of overlap between the four different points, yeah. And so even though I've given it 4, 4, 5, 4, I'm well aware that many other examiners may not. They might give it 5, 4, 4, 4 or something like that. This is very difficult with writing exam. Remember, this is not an exact science, and different examiners have different ideas and interpretations. So please remember that. There's no way that we can be sure that this is definitely the mark that this essay would get. Nonetheless, I think anything like this is likely to pull down your content, because this is incorrect. Yeah, it's not right. It's not what the second author says. Something like this, never write it. It's more likely to bring down your mark than anything else. Yeah, it's more than just a little tiny mistake. It's a content mistake, because it's not right. It's untrue. Okay, so be careful. Do be very pedantic. Okay, so let's carry on. Firstly, worrying too much about what other people say or following outdated rules does not enhance creativity. Yeah, this is worrying, so it does not. Yeah, it's singular because it's a gerund. Secondly, paying too much attention to expected social norms does not help to build a strong sense of yourself. Good. I remember my grandfather told me off when I was a child because I was spending too much time working with a computer instead of learning a manual job. Now I work as a computer scientist, and this would not be possible if I had paid too much attention to my grandfather's remarks. Yeah, too much or so much attention. And that is good. You've got a nice, strong argument with a concrete example. I know why he's put that in. He's put in a concrete example. And by the way, here is concrete examples in the previous paragraph. Yes, it's good for that reason. He's certainly got argument, concrete example, argument, concrete example. So that's excellent. So I do like some parts of the content. I just don't like that sentence. If that weren't there, I feel like the content could be higher. Okay, in conclusion, I think that youngsters should not consider social conventions or complaints, but follow their own rules. Listening to other people's suggestions, that's quite an important one, don't make mistakes like that, yeah, can be detrimental either to your career or to your personal life. Good parallel structure with the repetition of the your, but we don't say job career. Yeah, we just say career. And so that's what pulled down the language a little bit. We don't say job career. We don't say should not take notice of. We say should take no notice of. Yeah, and so there were only a few things that I thought pulled down the mark a little bit. I didn't like behavior in the plural either. That will bring it down a bit. But generally, a good essay. Now, I've got another one that I can go through, but unfortunately, let me put that back up for you. Unfortunately, I am going to have to go now because I have a student coming, and there's a second essay from this student that I'd like to talk about. But I think maybe we'll do it later today or maybe tomorrow. There's also another essay that I've had from a Russian student talking about the Afghan conflict. It's a translation more than an essay, but it'll be quite interesting to look at that as well and look at the corrections that I've made. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching. If anybody out there is interested in me marking their CPE essay or their CAE essay, I do that without classes. I still recommend that you take a class because I think it's better value. I offer the classes £40 for the class for 1 hour, and you get your 2 essays marked and you get your feedback and things like that. Whereas if you just want me to mark the essays, I'm afraid I do have to ask for 20 for 2 essays. But I'll certainly mark it. I'll give you marks for the CPE or CAE criteria, obviously. And perhaps if I get time, I'll make a video about it as well, explaining my corrections. But still, I would rather, I think it's a much better, you get much better value if you come for classes, and I think you'll be coming back for more as well. Okay, so thanks everybody for coming to today's class. Thank you, Yulia. I appreciate all the support, and remember, if you want to watch any of this stuff, all you got to do is go to skype-lessons.com. That's where I'll be keeping all my stuff. That's where I am online. It's my online space, that place, my online home, my online shed. And that's where you come if you want to see new stuff from me. Okay, so I better go. I better get another coffee for the first lesson of the day. I hope you all have a nice day. I hope it's as sunny where you are as it is where I am, because it's gorgeous today. Really nice weather. And I hope to see you all soon, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps the next day. See you soon.